The Heat took on the league-leading Boston Celtics on Wednesday and would do so without several key players. Things started off badly for Miami, but eventually they rallied to put together one of their grittiest and best performances of the season, ultimately resulting in a 13-point loss. Are there positives that the team can build on? What can the Heat tighten up to find a way to win when the two teams face each other again on Friday? We break it all down on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. The Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app, thank you so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Well, the Miami Heat hung in there until the very end, losing to the Celtics 134-121. No answer for Jayson Tatum, who went off for 49 points. But the Heat offense did shoot 52% overall, 46% from three-point range, and had it to a two-possession game with 4 minutes to go, but Jayson Tatum made back-to-back threes to put the Celtics up 10 and put the Heat away. Bam Adebayo, Max Strus each scored 23. Tyler Herro had 22 points and 9 assists. David, you and I said that there was no way that the Heat could win this game without Jimmy Butler still out with a knee injury for this one. But with that in mind, are you impressed with how the Heat played tonight?
Absolutely. Like there's taking it with a grain of salt, of course, considering they were down 14 in the first quarter. And so the thought process from there on out was, just don't make this a bloodshed, just don't make it a complete and total blowout. And Miami rallied. Like that was as tough and gritty a performance as you'll ever see. Bam went up to another level. He was continuing to catch fire the way he has over the last several weeks. Tyler here was knocking down big shots. You could see that he had shaken off whatever rust he had accumulated due to injury. He was playing really well. Max Strus had a sensational third quarter. Caleb Martin was doing some things. Kyle Lowry was doing some things. Haywood Highsmith, the best three-point shooter in the NBA, not in a Boston Celtics uniform, came out and provided a spark. That was really impressive. Without your second big and Dwayne Dedmon, trotting out 42-year-old Udonis Haslem out there to try and close out on Jayson Tatum, who was feeling it from the very first second of the game. That should have been kind of a sign that Miami wasn't really equipped to challenge the Celtics, but they did. They did, at least for, 40, 44 minutes or so. Yeah. I think that initial loss was or the initial deficit in the first quarter was just too much for them to overcome. Boston had that confidence, even though Miami would take the lead for a point or two throughout the course of the game. Yeah. Celtics were very, very comfortable. They win at home a lot. They've been a very, very good team, and they were shooting so well from the perimeter. Miami's defense, without Jimmy Butler in there, and relying again on Haywood Highsmith, on Udonis Haslem, and Gabe Vincent back from injury. All these different players who had been in and out of the lineup, or in Udonis's case, not having played at all. It was not a good place for Miami to be. So, yeah, I don't know. We don't normally engage in moral victories, but I'm absolutely taking one for tonight's game.
Look, we said the Heat have no chance in this game unless they catch fire from three-point range and almost score with Boston. That's exactly what happened. The best three-point shooting night of the season by far for the Miami Heat. To your point, the Celtics getting out to that early lead. Jayson Tatum making, his first 6 or 7 shot attempts, made 3 of Boston's first 6 three-point attempts. Boston actually made 6 three-pointers before Miami even made 1. So you just think about that discrepancy. And then the way the Heat were able to rally back, a 17-2 run late in the first quarter to take a 27-25 lead, that was huge. Yeah, it erased that early lead. I don't know. I think that was sort of an uncharacteristic run for the Celtics to give up after the Heat uncharacteristically gave up that lead at the beginning. So I think it was a wash, basically. That entire first quarter to me was a wash. And really what it came down to me, the swing factor was just sort of the turnovers and the easy points that Boston was able to get. Both teams were just lighting it up from three-point range. I mean, let's just go to their box score here. It was Miami went 18 of 40 for the Miami Heat, and then 22 of 45 for the Boston Celtics. That's insane. That the Celtics shooting 49%, the Heat shooting 45% from three-point range. Both teams just lighting it up. It was an offensive. What is it? Is this considered a barn burner? I think it is. Second highest total the Heat have scored all season, behind only what they scored 132 points against Charlotte, which I think the Celtics just toured Charlotte for 140 points. So everybody just scores their season highs against the Charlotte Hornets this year. But
Right.
a really good game for the Heat. And my point is, like what you were talking about with all the injuries you have and the way that the Heat were able to step up and go shot for shot with the Celtics until basically the final 2 minutes, and we will get to what happened at the end there in a minute here, but being able to go shot for the Celtics for basically 45 to 46 minutes of this game, I do think that there's an element of a moral victory here. And I do think, regardless of what you and I believe this to be, that the Miami Heat walk away from this game feeling pretty good about it. I bet you if you get those players in a moment of honesty, that they say, you know what, we really had no business being in this game, but we're gritty,
Yeah.
we're the doghouse, blah, 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 Heat culture, etc., talking points, blah, blah, blah. But we hung in there with the best team in the NBA, which the Celtics are, undoubtedly. So I think the Heat have to feel good. And I think they probably do. And I think they're going to use this as evidence of, yeah, this is just game 8 of the Eastern Conference Finals, baby. We're going toe-to-toe with these guys no matter any time we're on the court with them.
I don't know that they necessarily feel good, right? I mean, we've heard enough players that they talk about following loss. It doesn't matter, right? It's the bottom line. If we win, no, then everything else doesn't matter. But I think you can take some encouragement from this. And that, I think, is a step in the right direction. And moreover, the fact that they did have a lead, even after that huge deficit early on, that's the kind of encouragement that can build into some anger moving forward. Like we talk about this in a bigger macro picture in yesterday's preview of the series, that's what the Celtics were facing after being up 2-1 in the NBA Finals. Then they lost the next 3 games. And then they were kind of pissed off. It's like, we had this series in our hand. We could have done something with this. And instead we blew it up. We blew up and then we just fell apart. Now, this was within the context of one game. But again, from Miami perspective, we were down a lot. We messed up. We rallied. We had some strong performances across the board. We should have been able to close this out. I don't think they're comfortable. I don't think they're happy with tonight's result because, again, regardless of the talent disparity or anything else, they were pretty close. But that's good. That's good that they're pissed off. They should be. And that's what more than anything else, that's probably the impressive thing. Like we talked about this yesterday in this preview. I thought, I wanted to see how Miami would respond because I don't know that they've been tested throughout the course of the season. I don't know that they've had games there where they haven't necessarily even looked like they really cared. This was very, very different. Missing your best player, Jimmy Butler, missing some key backups that haven't played all season, missing Dwayne Dedmon. A lot of different factors there, and Miami just never buckled. They continue to show resolution, resolve the whole way through. Pretty positive, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, at least that's the way I took it. And again, the team's not happy with it. Good. They're pissed off. They believe they could win.
Yeah, I don't know if they're happy with it. Look, I don't expect the Heat to be doing cartwheels in the locker room right now, but right. I do think that when you
Only
go back
13, yeah.
When you go back and you look at the film, if you're this team and you're in the middle of an 82-game season and you're trying to find measuring sticks, and this, as we said, was a measuring stick game for a team that had come into this winning 3 straight. Defense, offense, both things trending in the right direction, starting to get a little bit healthier. This was the ultimate test. This was the measuring stick. And if you're looking at it from that perspective, I think there's a lot that you could take away from this. I also think that there's a lot that you can't take away from this. I don't know that the Heat really are all the way in there with the Boston Celtics. I don't expect Haywood Highsmith, who walked into this game making 4 3-pointers all year, to make, what was it, 5?
Straight, yeah.
To make 3 straight and then 5 overall for him, was it? Yeah. No, it was 4 for him. Tied a season high, or tied his season total. Tonight on made threes with 4 from 6. I don't expect him to get going in the first half the way that he did. Max Strus, yeah, he was great. 5 for 10, all 5 of those, I believe, coming in the third quarter. They got like kind of streaky shooting performances from different guys up and down the roster. I think Gabe made 2 in the fourth quarter. Bam Adebayo made his first 3-pointer since January 25th of 2021. That's wild. That was 2 seasons ago, David. Like, you're getting unexpected contributions and 3-point making from places on the roster that you don't usually get it. Whereas from Boston's perspective, they got their 3-point shooting from all the places that they're used to getting it from. Jayson Tatum going 8 of 12. That's about, I mean, he's not going 8 of 12 every night, but he's taking about that many threes. You got Malcolm Brogdon going 5 for 7. He's wide open on every single one of them. He's having a great year for them. Marcus Smart 2 for 3. Derek White 3 for. This is the best 3-point shooting team in the NBA. This was not an anomaly for them. This is what has been consistent for them all season. For the Heat, this was a total anomaly, and I don't think that they can count on this.
All right. So if Boston was playing basically up to par for them, right? This is more or less a pretty typical performance given how well they've been shooting the ball this year. do we expect that they'll be able to carry that forward on Friday, because that is the norm for them? And then counting on Miami not being able to hit as consistently from three as they did tonight. Is there any positives that you can take from this aside from emotional, moral victories out of this? Because
I don't know. I thought defensively they got pretty roasted. The zone did not hold up. Shout out to Eric Reed saying that the zone's holding up against the Boston Celtics offense. I think they had 78 points with like 5 minutes to go in the third quarter, and I was like, I'm not sure that counts as holding up. Boston, 135 points per 100 possessions is the rate that they scored tonight. That's even higher than their historically great rate of 121 per 100 possessions that they've been averaging this season. Miami, on the other hand, 124.7 points per 100 possessions. So they were at a historic pace in this game too. So Boston, it was a little atypical for them with how much they scored. I think given how much they got in transition and at the basket, and their overall percentage was, from three was really, really high. But I just think that they're closer to this than what Miami is. So I don't know. I think that on one hand, you just look at the Heat and you're like, you really had no business taking the Celtics to 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals, and yet you did. And that's more a reflection of this team's resolve than anything else. And so there's things you got to feel good about in this game. Look, it's way better than getting blown out by 30, okay? For sure. So I think overall, measuring stick-wise, you feel better about the direction you're trending in if you're the Miami Heat. But it was ultimately a loss for Miami. That means we do have to hand out some blame pie. Where were the areas that swung the game? We're going to get to that next. But David, first, tell the listeners about BetOnline.
Today's episode of Locked On Heat is brought to you by BetOnline.net, your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, and you probably do if you're listening to this, you can find those all at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Back here with Locked On Heat. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Well, that smell you smell is the smelly smell of another smelly loss. It is time to hand out some blame pie, David. Tough, I think, to hand out blame pie for this game, considering how well the Heat played overall. Just got outdone by the Boston Celtics in the end. So I kind of want to go an alternative version with this and kind of pick different areas of why the Heat lost this game. But I will hand out some blame pie, though, to one player in particular. And that's got to, and I hate to do this. I really hate to do this, but it has to be Bam Adebayo. It has to be Bam Adebayo. 10 for 19 overall, 23 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals. You look at that, and he made a three-pointer for the first time in 2 seasons. You look at all that, and it's great. But only got to the line once. Had 5 turnovers. You could blame the refs, and I know a lot of people will, but he did that. Ultimately, that's what happened. 5 turnovers and missed a bunch of point-blank shots at the basket, probably half a dozen. And that kind of leads me to my greater sort of blame area for this is the Heat as a team missed about 9 or 10 shots at the rim, like point-blank within a foot of the basket that they usually make. Yeah. And the Celtics did such a good job of turning those misses at the rim into transition makes on the other end for them. So not only are you losing out on those 2 points if you're the Miami Heat, you're giving up 2 points and sometimes 3 on the other end for the Celtics. So we're talking about 4 and 5 point swings dotted throughout the game. That, to me, given how well both teams shot the ball, how well both teams basically executed their offense for the most part, that to me was the swing factor of the game. Was just all of that. And Bam Adebayo was not the only culprit, but certainly the biggest culprit when it came to those things.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to recall off the top of my head. I'll have to go and rewatch it to see just exactly how many he did.
It was 5 or 6. I had it up here a moment ago. It was 5 or 6, but I could tell you.
There were a lot of instances there where he was knocked down to the ground or he lost his footing, lost his balance when he was being guarded by Al Horford. And I think that was part of the problem, which eventually culminating in a technical foul, something we don't see very often from Bam. He doesn't normally complain through the refs, but not able to get to the line, not getting those foul calls. not getting the superstar treatment that maybe he thinks he deserves at this point. So I know a lot of Heat fans will say, well, he probably should have gotten those calls, but you don't ever want to just rely on getting those calls.
Exactly.
I think that might have thrown him off to a bit of a degree there.
Got ejected.
But you're right.
Picked 2 technicals up right away. That's not a good look. I know that the game was already over. It didn't cost the Heat the game tonight, but an ejection's never good. You can't really do that if you're Bam. And I did just look it up. It was 4 of them in the restricted area, and then 2 more like right on the line of the restricted area. So I'm going to go ahead and round up to 6 there. Those are shots that Bam's been making, and I thought he had a good game overall. I just think that I'm trying to almost find like a figurehead for that problem, and it's not like, I don't think it's unfair to give Bam some blame there, especially when you have Jayson Tatum on the other end pitching a perfect game, scoring 49 points. We said that Bam had to be dominant. He was good, but he wasn't dominant, and you hate to put blame on the team's best player tonight, but that's kind of what it kind of boils down to sometimes.
Yeah, and giving up 11 rebounds to Jayson Tatum isn't a good look for your center either. Like, I know that's by default. Horford usually boxes out and does a really good job of keeping their bigs, an opposing big, from pulling down that board. Tatum swoops in there, pulls it down, and initiates a fast break, et cetera. Jaylen Brown, their second leading rebounder, was 7. So that's clearly by choice there. At the same time, you could think maybe instead of calling for a foul, maybe Bam could be a little bit more interested in just, chasing the rebound and things of that sort. He only did wind up getting 6 rebounds. So not an ideal showing for him, at least when it comes to that. But he did have 5 assists as well, 2 steals. Really good game overall. I mean, I know we kind of, that's what we do, is we issue out some slices of blame pie, but I don't know that he necessarily deserves it. Yeah. Aside from some of those gimmies. It's a tough one.
I'm okay with not actually recording any blame pie, because we've been keeping a tally all year long. Sure. Considering that you and I consider this a moral victory, I almost say, do we even just do some moral credit, like moral cookies?
No.
Moral morsels? Do we go in that direction?
No. Too alliterative for one, and 2, no, I don't think that's fair either. Like,
also,
they played,
no such thing as
they played really well. They played really well, but not good enough to pull out the victory there. Look, there was a lot of good performances, though.
Can we talk about Haywood Highsmith? Yeah, let's. Okay, yes. So we don't have to. Let's not. You and I have both decided no tallying, no recording of anything, right? That's not for this game.
It's a wash. It's a wash.
Haywood Highsmith.
They did their job tonight, I think.
Tied a career high of points with 16 tonight. Back-to-back threes in the first quarter. We already mentioned before. Walked into the arena tonight having made 4 3-pointers all year. Walks out of the arena having made 8 3-pointers now all year. It's wild.
Like a season total, yeah.
He also, it wasn't just the 3-point shooting either. It wasn't just like a night where he got streaky. He was big on the boards. 8 rebounds overall, 3 offensive rebounds. 1 really late in the game when Miami was still sort of hanging in there. Got a big offensive rebound after a Tyler Herro missed to keep possession, down 8, 4.5 minutes to go. Led to a Bam jumper, long 2 from him to keep Miami in there. He guarded Jaylen Brown down the stretch, and Jaylen Brown back to his not knowing how to dribble ways. 6 turnovers for him tonight. He still got to his average of 26 points tonight. I'm not even totally sure how, concerning the turnovers and the foul trouble. But yeah. But kind of like not an efficient, good Jaylen Brown game, despite the fact that he got to his average points per game total. But Haywood Highsmith, best game of his career, and I don't think it's close. 6 for 9 overall, 67% shooting, 16 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks. Really good overall.
Yeah, no, really nice showing from him. We talked about it in the preseason when we were looking for the positives that Highsmith could contribute. There's a lot of energy there. The confidence factor for him is a huge one. And we saw after he knocks down that first shot, he kind of feels it a little bit, and he's just much more comfortable letting the 3 fly. But he was having an impact in other aspects of the game. We've always talked about when it comes to Highsmith, what does he do well? It's kind of hard to see. Tonight, the shooting was very well, but more than over, I think he just provided a lot of energy, was flying around, bringing the ball up court, initiating things with the rebounding. Like, he was a very positive.
Those early threes that he made, you and I talk about this all the time. Once he gets one good thing, even if it's like a tip in, he just springs with confidence all of a sudden. He just starts blossoming into the player that he'd want him to be. He just needs one good thing to go his way early in the game, and making that first 3-pointer early in the game, he comes right back down the other end and jacks up another 3. And you're like, who is this guy? And all of a sudden, he's, like I said, 16 points tonight, was huge off the bench for Miami. was a big reason why they were able to get to hang in this game. So you love to see that from Haywood Highsmith. While we're on the topic of blame pie, we should also give credit/blame to Jayson Tatum. The 49 points thing is an obvious thing, but this was his best game by far against the Miami Heat for his career. The Heat, we know, has had Jayson Tatum's number for the most part.
Jimmy
Jayson
Butler
Tatum
is a big factor there, I think.
Not having Jimmy Butler, the injury, yeah, I mean, that goes without saying. But the good point. But they had no answer. The zone, not effective against Jayson Tatum. Caleb Martin, not effective against Jayson Tatum. They needed Jimmy Butler. Tatum came into this game averaging 20.8 points per game against the Heat for his career. His previous high was 33 points. Blew both of those things out of the water, 49 points for him. Back-to-back threes in the final 3 minutes and 42 seconds to turn what was a 2-possession game into a 10-point game and kind of put the Heat away. We're going to talk more about what happened exactly over those final couple of minutes where the Heat offense that was on fire all night suddenly fizzled out. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat. Back here with Locked On Heat. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Reach out, lockedonheat@gmail.com. Also, Spotify Wrapped is a thing on social media now. So if we are up on your top podcasts that you listen to on Spotify, shout us out on social media. We'll be sure to share your tweets and Instagram posts as well. Let's get to some listener questions here. Jimmy for FMVP writes in on Twitter using the hashtag AskLOHeat. What happened at the end, David? What did happen at the end? I do have a quick play-by-play that we can go through really quick. The Heat going scoreless in the final 2 minutes and 21 seconds. So they did not score in that final 2:21. Here's what happened. Bam missed a fadeaway jumper. Kyle Lowry turned the ball over. Bam turned the ball over. Bam turned the ball over again. And then Haywood Highsmith missed a three-pointer. And then Bam Adebayo got ejected, and then the game was over. So that was basically their offense for the final 2.5 minutes. What did you see? What went wrong there? Is it credit to Boston's defense? Is it just Heat finally missing shots? What do you think?
I think it was fatigue, and I know they'll never cop to it, right? But the pace of this game was blindingly fast. Like the game itself ended within just over 2 hours. I think it was 9:45, and after a late tip-off, the game ended like almost just over 2 hours long. So a very, very quick pace game. Not a lot of, again, free throws to kind of slow things down for Miami, give them an opportunity to build some points that way. And I think they were just gassed, like a supreme effort from such a limited skeleton crew of players available where you're trotting out Udonis Haslem. You're not getting almost any contributions off the bench. So you're asking all these players to play these incredibly high two-way minutes that take a lot out of you. I think by the end there, you see, that Jayson Tatum shot fall down and you get demoralized. I think you just kind of realize, look, that we gave it our all. We tried our best for 44 minutes. It just wasn't enough. And now we're kind of just letting things fall apart here. That's the way I saw it. I mean, again, there might be minutia in terms of how Boston did something particularly well, maybe knocking down shots towards the end and Miami just missing those shots. But I really do think fatigue was a factor. I'm curious to hear from players in tomorrow's press to see whether or not they actually will admit it or something like that. Because that's what I saw anyway in the last few minutes. Yeah.
Look, the what happened bears that out, right? What happens when you get tired? You give up rebounds, you turn the ball over, you make mistakes. And that was 3 turnovers in the final 2.5 minutes. And they gave up 3 offensive rebounds during that same stretch to Boston. And, no legs, to your point. I'm with you. That's what happens. That's what happens when you're playing 8 guys. Boston played 9 guys tonight. They had a few more, they had their core players. I know Robert Williams hasn't played for them all year long. It has not mattered. They're the best team in the NBA without him. So not having Jimmy Butler, not having some other guys, but mostly Jimmy Butler, that was the big thing for them. Dwayne Dedmon, not having him, that was another blow, but I mean, whatever. So, that's what happened at the end. Roberto Gutierrez writes in, does this count as a moral victory? The Celtics shooting won't last forever. The Heat fought hard there. We already discussed the moral victory thing. I think we put a yes to that question.
Yes.
In terms of the Celtics shooting not lasting forever, I initially thought that. But after watching them tonight and kind of doing the research leading up to the preview and watching the last few games of them, maybe it does last forever. These shots are so wide open that they are getting. It's unbelievable. The Heat's defense, again, trending in the right direction. It just felt like they were one of the worst 10 defenses in the league tonight. The Celtics get whatever they want.
They've done that against every team all year.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the Heat.
Broadcast.
Yeah.
The Chicago Bulls, the only team that have found a way to stifle them twice. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing. Maybe Spo didn't watch enough Bulls film there to extrapolate anything from there. But the passing, as I just said, it was a very 2014 Spurs like, right?
Yes,
Just swing,
yes.
swing, swing, constantly an open somebody from either from the wing or from the corner. They were getting whatever looks they wanted, able to knock those down pretty easily. And that's what you get when you have Al Horford as your starting center.
Yeah.
You've got 5 players out there that can all pass the ball, who can all spread the floor from 3. I mean, all of them shooting very, very well.
Yeah.
It's a 5-out spread offense. It's really difficult, especially
and
when
once you have
Miami's
Tatum
in that zone.
and now that you have Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown embracing that part, not doing so much hero ball stuff like Marcus Smart has called them out for in the past, they're great playmakers. Both of them are, well, not Jaylen Brown, but Jayson Tatum's become a really good playmaker passer. Jaylen Brown's doing his best. Liam Harlow writes in, do we win if Jimmy plays in this game? What do you think?
That's a big one. I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe the margin is closer. Because then I think that the tempo of the game changes with Jimmy out there because he's such a good defensive player. I think some of those passes along the perimeter get stolen because of his elite, if not league best anticipation, the fact that he can put a hand up or see where the ball is going to next a split second before it actually gets there, leading to a fast break opportunity. And his own inimitable style, inaudible, whatever you want to call it, inimitable style, getting to the line, slowing the game down, that works more in Miami's favor. Conversely, you're not going to get that kind of incredible three-point shooting that you got from Highsmith, Gabe Vincent, Tyler Herro, et cetera, everybody who was contributing on the floor. Max Strus probably doesn't go off the way he does in the third quarter because you've got to feed Jimmy the ball. It's not to say that Jimmy's selfish necessarily. It's just, he does tend to dominate the offense as he should. He is the team's best player. So maybe the team plays a little differently with Jimmy out there, and it works in their favor. It also works against them because their style tonight is not one that we've seen with Jimmy on the floor in terms of that incredible three-point shooting. They're not going to take 40 three-point shots if Jimmy's on the floor. And I think that only worked out today because he was not on the floor. So that's
I agree.
I know.
I'm with you. I don't think that the Heat shoot like this if Jimmy Butler is out there. It's a little counterintuitive. You would think, well, if Jimmy's out there, he's driving to the basket and he's spraying out to shooters, and those shooters are even more open. But that wasn't the factor tonight. From like Miami shooters were just open; they were making shots. So, look, I don't know. Like it's not as if this was the season high for the Heat this year. Jimmy Butler played in that game against the Warriors where they shot 43 attempts from 3-point range, and so they've gotten to that number when Jimmy Butler has played. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say, you know what, the Heat do win this game if Jimmy Butler plays because. Those missed shots at the basket are not missed shots at the basket for Jimmy Butler. He's too good at the rim. He's creating more turnovers, and he's a guy who can functionally and credibly guard Jayson Tatum. If the difference between Jayson Tatum scoring 40 points and 49 points is dramatic when the game was this close down the stretch, and then again having somebody to go to in those final 2.5 minutes where Miami's offense did not score at all, having Jimmy Butler to go to in those moments would have been huge. So I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna say, you know what? Also, there's no way anybody can prove me wrong. I'm gonna say yes. The Heat would have won this game if Jimmy Butler plays. Jimmy Butler will play. Well, we don't know. Is expected to play on Friday night. I really hope he does because it was such a fun game tonight. It would be so much more fun if Jimmy Butler were involved and both teams are relatively healthy. So we'll see what happens Friday night. But for now, that's it for us today. You've been listening to Locked On Heat. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Ring the bell to get notified as soon as new episodes go up. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for joining me, David.
You got it, Wes.